Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sharks4Kids Marine Science Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'm Education Director with Sharks4Kids. And we have an awesome hangout in store for you today. For anyone watching today who's new to Sharks4Kids, we're working to create the next generation of ocean advocates through education, through outreach, and through adventure. So after today's session, please check out the Sharks4Kids website, where you can find all kinds of curriculum, interviews with marine experts from around the world, videos, pictures. It's just a great place to hang out, some activities you can do with your classrooms, a lot of fun. So joining me today, I have Duncan Brake. And Duncan first went to sea when he was 3 days old and really hasn't left. He's got a degree in marine biology from Stirling University in Scotland, spent time working at the Shark Lab in Bimini, got to work on various shark shoots, and his work has been featured on documentaries with National Geographic, Discovery, Animal Planet. Just recently, some phenomenal filming of lemon sharks in the mangroves of Bimini was featured in BBC's epic series Shark, and he's using his images to inspire people to dive in and explore while protecting sharks and our oceans. Duncan, how you doing?
Good, good. How's everybody doing today?
Let me just turn on the microphone so they can say hi. There we go. Microphones are on.
Hey guys.
All right, and Duncan, we have my class joining us as well today. We got some 6-7, so there they are.
Hey guys, how you doing?
All right, I'll let you take over because you've got the good stuff today.
Perfect. All right, thank you very much, Joe, and once again, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I have my special glasses here. Maybe they'll help. I don't know, but
excellent. All right. So I'm going to start and share the screen in a minute or two and start the presentation. As Joe said, I do a lot of camera work. My work's featured in a lot of documentaries for different broadcast companies, and I'm also part of Sharks4Kids. We help put a lot of videos together which help educate people about sharks and our oceans. To start with, I'll just throw up the promo reel, which kind of shows some footage that I've shot over the last couple of years. You can have a little peek at that, and then I'll go on to the presentation. Okay. Let's see. Screen share, desktop. Alright guys, so hopefully you enjoyed some of that. Saw a lot of sharky friends and some other underwater critters. So we're going to talk a little bit about how science and media are being used in shark conservation. We'll go through that. So to start with, a little bit of background about myself. Like Joe said, I am originally from the UK. I went to university and studied marine biology. Originally, I was looking into the behavior of octopus, watching them navigate through mazes and open jars to get a reward. After I finished in Scotland, I actually went down to the Falklands and Antarctica, where I worked for about 3 years. That's where I really started filming. Getting the opportunity to film lots of penguins and seals and albatross. But it was a little bit too cold down there, so I started looking for opportunities to try and get into underwater filming, where I found the Bimini Shark Lab, actually on the island where we're located right now. And I went there and was one of the managers there for a few years, where I was able to really get a lot of practice filming sharks and other marine life. I also helped set up the BRUV projects, which we'll be talking about a little bit later on, which is baited remote underwater video systems. And then I've been very lucky enough to work with organizations like the BBC and National Geographic, filming some of their TV shows. Perfect. So here are a couple of little pictures showing myself and Jillian on what we do in Bimini. You can see a lot of different sharks. Up in the top left, there is a reef shark. On the top right, we've got a big stingray. Down on the bottom right, we've got lots and lots of nurse sharks. And then on the bottom left, we have a nurse shark, which we were tagging and measuring for the Shark Lab. Here you can see a picture of us tagging a shark whilst I was spending time at the Shark Lab. All right, so on this slide we can actually see these are some of the shows that I have been involved with and worked for. Everything from blue chip stuff like Shark on the BBC, all the way through to some reality TV stuff like Whale Wars down in Antarctica. All right, we'll go on next. However, to see where we've come with technology, we really need to kind of look back and see how it all began. So what you guys can see on the right-hand side of this slide is a diagram of the photosphere. The photosphere was the very, very, very first time anything was filmed underwater. It was developed in 1914, and if you look closely, you can see it kind of looks like an accordion coming down from the boat on the surface all the way down to this big sphere in the bottom. This could go down to a maximum of 250 feet, although most of the filming was done shallower than this. So how this would work, if we look on the next slide, is the videographer would take his camera all the way down and climb down this tube and go down into this pod, which was located at the bottom of where the photosphere was. If we can see it here in the top left hand corner, that huge device there was basically the camera housing. So the gentleman sat in there with his camera and then hand cranked the camera to spin and record the film. Here we can see a couple of the screenshots from some of the images that were first taken with the photosphere on the right and on the bottom. I wouldn't worry, that octopus was actually fake. It was a puppet. So thankfully, I don't think there's too many around that are that big. Okay, so when we actually, the first time we actually filmed sharks in the wild was actually with this photosphere, and it was with tiger sharks in Nassau. I'm not going to show the video because unfortunately our view of sharks changed a lot over the years, because the first time we filmed them, we actually caught the tiger sharks on camera, and then we killed the tiger sharks because people used to be quite afraid of these animals. Now, as you move along a little bit in history, we then come into the times where we have such movies like James Bond, you can see playing in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen show. Now, we used to handle sharks very differently and interact with them very differently and film them very differently. Here we can see a couple of guys who affectionately got named shark wranglers. Now, how they would actually get the sharks in the sequence is that they would long line for the sharks and capture the sharks. They'd then leave these sharks on the bottom, let them tire out, still attached to the line, and then when they were pretty tired, they'd then get the shark wranglers who would walk in, grab the shark, and then be holding the shark just off camera. So then when the segment was ready to see the shark on the film, they would then push the shark past the camera, and you'd then get the shot of the shark. You'd probably get this maybe 2 or 3 times the opportunity to do this with the shark, and then the shark would get enough strength and actually swim off on its way, and then they'd have to go and try and catch another shark. So this wasn't obviously great for the shark, and we interact with them very, very differently now, but it kind of shows you how our behavior with these animals has evolved over the years. Okay, let's see, on to the next slide. So, obviously our minds have been evolving on the way we deal with sharks, and so has technology. We've got the digital revolution. I'm pretty sure most of you guys, or most of your families, have a camera in some way, shape, or form. They might even have cameras on their phones, and it's this advance in technology which is making it easier for us to actually put cameras underwater and capture some of this amazing behavior. The camera that we film with, which I will show you guys at the end, actually records in something known as 4K, which is pretty much 4K is the same as 4 times high definition. Now, approximately 1 hour of footage on that camera is the equivalent of filling 32 iPods with music. So that gives you an idea of how much space these things are taking up. However, with these amazing cameras, we've had the ability to capture some pretty cool sequences. But we can't just take these cameras and throw them in the water. We need to put them in a big, big housing which is able to withstand the elements and also withstand the sharks if they decide they want to take a cheeky nibble. So this is an example of the camera housing that we have. It's very, very sturdy. It's all manual controls. So basically how you'd operate the camera above water, you'd be using the buttons on the housing underneath the water. And also we add certain things inside the camera like water alarms to make sure that it's sealed, and we also create a vacuum in the housing, which is basically we put a device on the outside of the housing which sucks all the air out of the camera housing, and then we then know that it's sealed when we take it in the water. Okay, so here's an image of us filming a hammerhead, and there's a cheeky little nurse shark to the side, and you can see the camera housing in action. So with all this new technology, we've been able to film very, very cool sequences like the lemon shark sequence, which we're going to show you a little peek of. This footage was all filmed in Bimini, the Bahamas. Now, most of the footage is actually shot at a higher frame rate, which means putting more frames into every second, which allows the footage to look like it's in slow motion when it's played back. Now, if we look at these clips, we can see some clips here of a drone footage which was actually captured by using a octocopter, suspending a camera above the water as the shark is swimming in towards the mangroves. Now in this sequence we can see the big pregnant female lemon shark approaching towards the edge of the mangroves where it is getting ready to give birth. Bimini is a very important nursery grounds for these juvenile sharks, and the mangroves provide an area for them to hide as well as hunt and also socialize with their friends. Like salmon go back to the same river to give birth, these big lemon sharks will go back to the same little mangrove estuary to give birth to their lemon sharks. Juvenile lemon sharks also have their best friends, their best buddies. Like you guys might have somebody you like to play in the playground with or go running with. These lemon sharks have their best friends too, and have certain friends that they will like to socialize and stay with in the mangroves for different activities, whether it's hunting or feeding or even just hiding from big predators. So you can see with these advances in technology with underwater filming and also these drones, we're able to get these pretty revealing sequences into the lives of these amazing animals. Perfect. We will move on to the next slide. All right, so we're going to have a little look at the integration of video and photo into shark science, and also seeing how we're using photo and video to help our conservation efforts with Sharks4Kids. So first of all, a good example of how cameras are being used in science is with laser telemetry. Basically, sharks with laser beams. Now, if you can see, the diver is swimming down and he actually has a camera in his hands. Either side of that camera are small lasers. These lasers are then projected out from either side of the camera as the scientist is taking photos and video. When the scientist goes back to the lab and reviews that photo and video, he can see where the laser point marks appear on either side of the shark, and by extrapolating the number of pixels, he's able to estimate within a very good range the length of the shark. Now, why wouldn't we just capture the shark and measure it? Some shark species, like the great hammerhead, which we can see here, are incredibly sensitive to being caught on a hook and line. So we don't want to stress the shark out, and we definitely don't want to kill it. So by using a method like this, we can take measurements of the shark without actually having to stress the animal out. Cool. All right. On to the next slide. Perfect. All right. The next slide, sorry, having a small technical issue. All right. Next way that we're actually using cameras with science are with BRUVs. Now, BRUVs, as I mentioned earlier, right at the start of the talk, are beta remote underwater video systems. In the photo, you can see a very basic BRUV with Mark Bond, who was doing some research in Belize with these. They're fairly easy to construct. The minimal equipment and costs, you can basically get a bunch of steel rebar and weld it together, basic camera on the top. You can even just use a GoPro for this. Now, the good things with these is that they can be dropped anywhere and at any depth. And it gives us a really good idea of baseline data of species abundance in the area. Also being able to look at the biodiversity and the impact of marine reserves. It's great to actually look and compare species diversity and abundance of animals in in and outside of marine reserves, so we can compare and see how successful protecting the waters are being. Now, the great thing at the moment is there's a system that's called the global finprint that's being set up, which is actually allowing scientists to collaborate all over the world and pool their data from these bruvs to get a really big global picture of waters. Now, moving on to this video, a friend of ours, Andy Murch, actually dropped a bruv down off the edge of Bimini in 800 feet of water. Again, another reason why bruvs are great. We probably wouldn't be scuba diving down at this depth, and it's very hard to send technology and humans down this deep, or very expensive. So here we can see, after a very short time, they get a very curious tiger shark actually comes in to investigate the bait. Now, in a lot of bruv systems, we actually use a cage for the bait so that the bait remains protected, and this doesn't happen as much. If you look closely, you can see the tiger shark's nictitating membrane covering its eye to actually protect its eye as it comes in to try and bite the bait. The nictitating membrane looks like the shark's eyelid. You can see it folding back and forth as it covers the eye there. And eventually the shark wins. A big male. All right, on to the next slide. Okay, so another way that cameras have been used over the years in science and also in television are criticams. Now, criticams were originally developed by National Geographic Television and a couple of scientists. It basically gives you the animal's point of view, their behavior, how they feed, how they mate. Now, these started as huge devices that we'll see in a minute on one of the photos, but then eventually evolved down to very small cameras like GoPros, which is a lot better for the animals and less invasive. Originally, they were used and attached to the animals with a device that pretty much looked like a pair of tongs that you'd use when you were having a grill or a barbecue, which would then slip off the animal. Now we use different detachment methods, anything from a suction cup, which basically sucks onto the side of the shark, all the way up to devices that are time-sensitive released using magnesium. Now, magnesium reacts with the salt water, and by controlling the amount of magnesium on the attachment, we can control how long the camera will be attached to the shark before it pops off. All right, so on this photograph, we can see this old photograph of one of the very first criticams that was attached to the nurse shark. You can see this camera is huge in comparison to the shark and very bulky. And when these cameras were that big, you then also have to question yourself, are they affecting the shark's natural behavior? These criticams were originally put on these nurse sharks, on males and females, when they were mating, to try and observe how the sharks actually mated. Here on this slide we can see a couple of different images of other animals around the world with original criticams. So you can see they've adapted and evolved over the years. And on this slide we can see another type of device of criticam and the suction cup for actually sticking onto the side of a whale. Okay, now on this image on the top left-hand corner, we can see how the critter cams have evolved over the years and getting a lot smaller as they've progressed. On the top right-hand side of the slide, we can see one of the original critter cams placed on a tiger shark and how big that actually is compared to a small GoPro that has been put on a tiger shark over the last few years. All right, so we're going to move on to the next slide. On this little video, footage thanks to Andy Brandy Casagrande, he actually was trying to get some footage of what it looks like to be a hammerhead shark. He put the GoPro on the dorsal fin of the shark, and we then get this kind of bird's eye view, well, the hammerhead view of the shark. As the shark swims around, we can see it interacting with other sharks. This is the actual speed that the shark is swimming, so we can see it's actually pretty fast. Some nurse sharks in the distance there. Eventually, the shark gets tired of having the camera on, so it decides to knock it off itself. The shark is actually doing a process that we call chafing. It's basically when the shark turns up on its side and has a little scratch, but it uses the seabed to scratch itself. You think sharks don't really have hands to turn around and scratch their back or give themselves an itch, so if they have something that's giving them a tickle or needs a scratch, they will actually turn their whole body on their side and rub their body against the sea floor. Or in the case of lemon sharks, we've seen them do it in the mangroves by rubbing themselves against mangrove roots. All right, next slide. So, we also make a lot of little videos and shorts about shark tagging and how it's done. This is important as well because it also helps the public understand why we're capturing these animals and what we're doing it for. Here we can see a big bull shark that has been restrained on the side of a shark lab boat, and the lab manager, Rachel, is actually inserting an acoustic transmitter into the body cavity of the shark. The shark is upside down, which might look a little cruel, but actually it's the most comfortable place for the shark to be in. When a shark is turned upside down, it goes into a process known as tonic immobility. Tonic immobility creates a sensory overload which pretty much puts the shark to sleep. This is great for scientists because it's like a natural anesthetic for the shark and allows them to tag them, work on them before they get released. On to the next slide. Here again we can see a small juvenile tiger shark being measured whilst it's in tonic immobility, whilst we're filming. Here is a little video about shark tagging that we made. If you look closely, you can see the scientist actually has a spear. Now we don't always have to catch the sharks to tag them. In the case that we mentioned with the laser telemetry, it's best not to catch hammerheads because they're very sensitive. So this method has been developed to actually spear tag. So you can see the scientist is swimming down and he spears the side of the shark. This is with a shark tag. This is an acoustic transmitter that sends a message to bottom monitors which are located in places around Bimini and along the coast of Florida. Bottom monitors, when the shark swims past them, pick up a message from that tag which allows them to know which shark was actually there and when it was there and how long it will stay there. These bottom monitors have been set up in an array and form a grid all the way along the coast of Florida and the United States and throughout a lot of the Caribbean islands. That means if this shark swims past one of those monitors and goes from Bimini over to the United States and back again, we will be able to see the movement. On to the next slide. And finally, we're also using cameras for things like Skype. Now, Sharks4Kids was established to help educate children around the world, and we can't always be there. So we are using cameras in computers to help educate kids across the world. In this slide, you can actually see one of the Google Hangouts that was being done at the Shark Lab with Jillian, and they were actually showing everybody a workup with a real nurse shark. They'll be tagging the shark, they'll also be measuring the shark, and also explaining its anatomy. All right. So here gives us a little bit more information about Sharks4Kids, and also shows a couple of examples of the videos that we were doing to help educate kids about sharks. I'll just let this play a minute or two. If you go online to the website, there is lots and lots of cool information and sharky facts. There's activity packets that you can go in. There's some games to play. And there's a lot of videos that you can watch that are constantly being updated about different shark species. So if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about sharks, go to www.sharks4kids.com. Okay. And and on to the next slide. So that pretty much concludes the talk about sharks and the information that we have. I'll get Joe to change the buttons over so that we can figure out if we have any questions in a moment.
Thanks. All right, Duncan. Thanks so much. That was awesome. I love that old footage, especially that Photosphere from the very beginning. That's pretty neat to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, if any teachers are interested to actually see the footage, I can send a link for the actual footage, but it's there's some very sensitive footage in there that might need some discretion. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So Duncan, if you don't mind just hitting the green button again so we can see your smiling face again.
Okay, let me see where. Okay. Green button. Perfect. Yep. All right.
All right.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Duncan, go ahead.
Yeah, before we go into questions, I just want to show you guys a couple of things. As we said, we saw that huge camera that guy had to climb all down into that giant dome and actually roll the camera. This is what we use now. You can see it's changed a lot. This tiny little cube is what we're filming with. This is actually the brain of the camera. Actually films in 4K and can actually go all the way up to 8K versions of this, which is like 8 times high definition. So you can see it's a lot smaller for what it was. And then we just attach lots of fun things like lenses to it so that we can actually shoot the things. And my camera is even controlled with a remote control. So I don't even have to touch my camera in cases. I can just sit there like on a phone and press all the buttons. It's pretty cool. Anyway, after you, Joe.
All right, very cool. So yeah, like Duncan had just said a minute ago, please, when you do finish with your classes, to follow up, check out sharks4kids.com and head over to the YouTube page where you'll find all sorts of videos, including my personal favorite one right now with the Hammerheads. I love the song, I love the video, it's a good one. So let's visit Mr. Southward's class. Let's get a couple questions. They're in Kapuskasing, Ontario.
Hi, Duncan. We are currently doing a research project on sharks, and each student has picked their own specific shark, and we're focusing on adaptations, both physical and behavioral. So a lot of the questions might be directed about that so that you can help them with the project, actually.
Very cool. No problems at all.
All right. So Lydia, would you like to ask the first question? Say that.
Where's the great white shark located?
Sorry, could you repeat that for me?
Where's the great white shark located?
Where is located? Because great whites are so big, they can actually move all the way around the world. In a lot of waters, you can get them anywhere from the coast of California all the way around to Florida. If they're wanting to come and have a little explore in some warmer waters, and then even over in Australia we get great whites as well. So they have a huge, huge home range and can move very, very long distances. I would actually have a look on the OSearch website as well as the Guy Harvey website. They have a great, great tracking app where you can actually look where certain different types of shark species are located and where they've been as well. So if you want to have a look at roughly where these sharks go, have a look at those two sites. Maybe we could add them into the description on the video. Joe knows how to do that, I think. And you guys can go and click those links and actually track where these sharks are now and where they've been.
Okay, we can definitely do that. That's another member of our team, Dr. Derek Burkholder, and he does a lot of work with that. So it's a really cool website where you can pick different species of sharks and see their patterns, where they've been in the last year, some of them up to 3 years. So if any classrooms are interested, just send me an email and I'll make sure to get that link passed on. Let's grab another one from Mr. Southward's class.
Okay.
What is the fastest?
Fastest shark, I believe, is clocked as a mako shark. Anywhere between 40 to 60 miles per hour, I think, or kilometers per hour, but they're pretty sure they haven't actually been able to record its top speed yet.
Okay, good question. So we're going to jump to Mrs. Sullivan's class, but don't worry, we'll probably have time to swing back for a couple more of your shark questions. So we'll turn on Mrs. Sullivan's mic. How's it going over there?
Hello.
Good.
Hey guys.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Can great white sharks survive the force of the Bermuda Triangle?
Can a great white shark survive the force of the Bermuda Triangle? That's very interesting, because Bimini, actually, where we're located right now, is right in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. All around in the waters where we are, there's lots and lots of wrecks, lots of shipwrecks, and lots of plane wrecks as well. Now, one of the things that they think that is responsible for the Bermuda Triangle is the change in, with all these wrecks in the Bermuda Triangle, sorry, is the change in old location technology, like we used to use like magnetic compasses to find our way around, and now we have GPSs that rely on satellites. So a lot of these planes and boats and stuff have been thought that they might actually have got affected by certain areas of high magnetivity, if I can say that right. And also there are areas in Bimini which are really have this really high magnetivity. There's a spot out in the ocean where you can actually go by boat and look at your compass, and if it's an old type of compass, the magnet will just spin and spin and spin around in circles. And that's why we think a lot of these things got lost in these areas. Now, it is very possible that if a shark swam into this area, which has this high magnetivity, that it could get very confused by what's going on in that spot. So if a great white decided to swim into the Bermuda Triangle and then experienced this area with a strong magnetivity, it could get a little confused with its navigating. Sharks are very sensitive to magnets and magnetic fields. There's shark defense technologies, and also there's this device called shark bands, which they actually use this magnetic technology to help repel sharks and move them away from certain objects. All those little black dots, if you look at a shark closely, all the way around their snouts, they have these tiny little black dots. Kind of looks like the shark hasn't shaved for a few days, it's got stubble. If you look inside of each of these tiny dots, there's a gel-like substance. It's like hair gel, and it creates a film around the snout of the shark, and that's very sensitive to that magnetic field. It usually allows sharks to detect any bioelectrical signals in the water, like heartbeats of a sick or injured fish. But in this case, in areas where that's got that high magnetivity, it could actually cause them to get very confused. I hope that helps a little bit.
Very cool question. Very cool answer, too. Let's grab another one.
How do you think poachers are impacting the populations on sharks?
How do I think poachers are impacting the population on sharks? Well, sharks are endangered throughout the world. Unfortunately, they reckon there's 100 million sharks get killed. Now, it's a huge number. Now, on average per year, we have 5 people die per year due to shark bites or shark-related injuries. Now, if we look at how many sharks are dying, unfortunately, if we look at how sharks breed, now sharks don't get mature enough to reproduce until they're quite old. They also don't give birth to many individuals. So like a fish like a snapper that will spawn thousands and thousands of eggs, a shark will only produce between 5 to 15. It all depends on the species. Some species only produce 1 single shark. So if we take a lot of these sharks out of the environments and poachers kill them, it's impacting the populations of these sharks because they're not able to recover because they don't reproduce in the same numbers. Now, sharks really help the oceans because they help eat sick and dying fish. If you have a fish that's been injured, or say you have a fish that has a disease, a shark will go for the easiest prey. So it will eat that fish and help stop the spread of the disease and help keep all the fish healthy. So if we remove the sharks, or the poachers get rid of sharks, we're then going to have very unhealthy fish stocks. Now also it affects humans. Now you look at in the Bahamas, they estimated quite a few years back that a Caribbean reef shark, one Caribbean reef shark, is worth $250,000 alive through the course of its lifetime. Now, if you think you can have one shark that's alive and it's worth that much money, why is it worth that much money? It's for the hotels that people come and stay in when they're coming to visit and see the sharks. It's also for the restaurants that they're going to eat in when they're coming to see the sharks. It's the dive operators they go with when they go and dive with the sharks. So throughout that entire lifetime of that shark, it's making money and providing money to all these different businesses. So we then compare that to if somebody came in and poached the shark and killed the shark, and the fisherman at the low end is probably only going to be making $50 for that shark. We then compare the economic value of that shark as $50 to the $250,000 that it could be spreading around all these different people and all these different businesses. So it's a twofold answer. It's one, it's going to be poaching sharks would actually give us very unhealthy fish stocks and would upset the food web and the food chain in our oceans, and also financially, sharks, it would hurt people in the long run. All right.
All right, another great question and a really, really good answer as well. Duncan, I have 2 students here who would like to ask a question. Here's Lucas first.
Have you always wanted to do what you do? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
With the filming and stuff, is that what your question is?
Yeah, like, have you always wanted to, like, film sharks and stuff?
Yeah. I've always been fascinated with cameras since I was little. But when I went to university, I was also fascinated by the ocean. And I originally went down like the route of a scientist route of studying marine biology and getting into that. Now, I'm glad I did that because as I progressed with my career in science, I realized that I was really interested in actually taking photos and videos of the work that was being done, because a lot of people can read scientific papers, but they're not for everybody, and that not everybody is going to sit down and read a big long scientific paper to find out about stuff. So I really enjoyed making these videos and photos to actually allow people to learn a little bit more about these animals. So that's kind of how my career path evolved. And yeah, I'm really, really happy with the work that I'm involved with and I do now.
All right, thanks, Lucas. And then we have Elijah coming over.
Hi, how old were you when you first went scuba diving?
How old was I when I first went scuba diving? This is a bit of a tricky one. I think I was probably, when it was my mother was probably about 8 months pregnant, which she probably shouldn't have been scuba diving with me. I was actually born in Abu Dhabi out in Arabia, and my parents were scuba diving quite a bit. So I think I scuba dove inside my mother's pregnant belly first time, but then I didn't do it again until I think I did a try dive when I was about 14. I learned to dive in Scotland, which I love. The waters are beautiful. You're not as clear as the Bahamas, and you don't see as many cool fish and stuff, but I'm really glad I got to learn in cold water because it's a really cool environment to experience and see.
All right. Bad time. We just had an announcement over the PA. Okay, so let me just check with our classrooms. Mr. Southward, do you have time for a few more questions?
Of course.
Yes.
All right, and Mrs. Sullivan's class, do you guys have time for a couple more?
We have to go to lunch in 3 minutes.
All right, let's steal one more from you guys then.
Okay, go ahead. Just stand up and advance, please.
Have you ever seen Deepsea Sharks?
Have I ever seen deep sea sharks? When I first went down to the Falklands and Antarctica, I actually got to see a lot of deep sea sharks raise and skates because we were doing exploratory trawls and actually bringing up animals from the deep to see what was actually down there. There's a huge part of our ocean that's still left undiscovered, and they're still discovering new species every year. One of the coolest deep sea sharks that I saw was a big Greenland shark that lives in deep water. And what had happened was it actually got accidentally caught by a toothfish vessel, which is a Patagonian toothfish longliner. It was treating the fishing boat like a McDonald's. Basically, the fishing boat was catching all the fish, and this big Greenland shark was going along and eating all the fish off the line. So it actually got entangled in the line and was brought up to the surface. It was huge. It was probably about the length of 2 cars, if you can imagine that, back to back.
What the?
Wow.
Very cool, and that's a great question. That brings up a good little segue. We have a new Deepsea Shark curriculum package. So if some teachers do want to check that out, if you head over to sharks4kids.com, it's under the our curriculum. There's some great activities. There's a really cool PowerPoint presentation and some information that your teachers can share with you guys, the students. So it's a newer package up there, Deepsea Sharks. So if you want to go in a little deeper, that'd be a perfect way to do it.
Well, thank you so much for this, and thank you, Mr. Brake, for your time. Can everyone say thank you?
Thank you!
Thanks, guys, for your great questions. Cheers.
Thanks for joining in. All right, let's go to Mr. Southward's class because I know they probably need a few more questions for their assignments.
Perfect.
Haley, would you like to ask a question? No? Let's get a grade 3. Casey?
When were sharks discovered?
Ooh.
What was it?
When were sharks discovered?
When were sharks discovered? Wow. I think people have been known about sharks for very long times. They've existed since the time of dinosaurs, and certain sharks, which are now extinct, like the megalodon, we know about their presence because of the teeth they left behind. So they've been around for so many years and are older than the dinosaurs. Now, We also know them a little bit because they were discovered by certain cultures, and we see it in the history. We see it in old seafaring tales from the UK back in the day of like pirates around the Caribbean. We also see it in people's culture, like in Fiji, where they have Dakagwa, I can't pronounce the name, but it's basically the Fijian shark god that looked after the tribal people. And we basically know about very early origins of cultures and people discovering sharks because of the stories in their legends and their local culture.
All right, let's grab some more, a couple more.
Tyler.
Why are bamboo shark bottom feeders?
Loud.
No. Bamboo sharks bottom feeders.
Can you hear that?
Would you mind repeating that for me? I couldn't hear it.
Loud, real loud.
Why are bamboo sharks bottom feeders?
You say, why are bamboo sharks bottom feeders?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, a lot of sharks are adapted to live on the bottom. I know bamboo sharks a little bit, but they're probably very similar to nurse sharks. Nurse sharks are adapted to be bottom feeders as well. And it's usually because of the food they like, looking for things on the bottom, things that live on the bottom. If you look at their mouths, most sharks that are bottom feeders will actually have an overturned mouth, which will be facing downwards, and their bodies will be adapted for laying on the bottom and moving around the bottom, which usually means that if you look at the back of a shark where its tail fin is, sharks that like to live and sit on the bottom don't usually have a fork in the top of their tail. Usually the bottom of their tail is round and flat so that it can actually sit on the bottom and won't drag around as it's trying to move around the bottom. Some sharks as well are adapted to live on the bottom too and feed on the bottom, and they'll actually use their pectoral fins, which are the ones on both sides, to actually move around, like they're actually walking around a little bit too. So most sharks have developed these adaptations so that they can actually feed on the prey they like. So they're probably bottom feeders because it's due to the type of food they like to eat.
Great.
Good question. So let's grab one more, and then we'll go off air for today. But Duncan, if you have a couple more minutes, maybe we can stick around for a couple off-air questions, a little after hours, if you will.
Okay, no problems.
All right. So let's grab one more question.
Anthony.
How long is a shark's age?
What's the oldest shark? Or how long do they live? Ask it. Go ahead.
How long
can sharks live?
How long can sharks live?
How long can sharks live? I think it's very species dependent. I can only talk about experience I have with certain sharks. Now, we age sharks in different ways by actually, we can count the number of rings on their vertebrae. So if somebody brings us a shark that's passed away, we can actually find out how old it is. So has anybody here seen a tree that's been cut? And you can see all we call them annuli. It's basically the rings in the tree show us how many years that tree has been alive. It's the same with sharks. We can age them by actually looking at these rings in the vertebrae and actually see how old the shark is. Now those rings exist because the different growing seasons. So in the summer, when there's lots of food around and the shark's growing quickly, the ring will be wide, and then in the winter it'll be really thin, so it'll look darker. So we will figure out the age of the shark. Now some sharks only live for a couple of years. Now other sharks live for lots and lots and lots of years, maybe even up to 20, 30 years. Some even longer. I think it's very hard to actually know. If you want to send us some questions on which shark that you're actually interested in finding out how old it is, we can try and help you out and find out for you.
Great.
All right. Well, we'll conclude for today. We'll go off air. Duncan, thank you so much for hanging out today for this
Thank you so
hangout.
much, guys. Cheers.
Been a lot of fun. We'll be announcing. Hi, Caitlin. We'll be announcing We'll be announcing shortly December Sharks for Kids Hangout, so keep an eye out on our Twitter, on our Google Plus feeds, on our Facebook, if you're interested in joining in that. And yeah, any more questions, you can always send them to myself at joeg@sharks4kids.com, or pass them on to the Facebook or Twitter, and I'm sure someone will get back. So Duncan, again, thanks so much, and we'll go off air for today.
Thanks very much, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Duncan.
You're the best.